Okay, so we need to go back to the very beginning, as they kind of say. I had, I did my master's in history from St. Stephen's College, which is also how I got into St. Stephen's College. Is a whole story by itself, which it does, um, work just now. I won't get into it just now, but I got in thanks to Pitru Singh, and there I finished my master's. And if you do history from St. Stephen's College, it's the probably you have to sit for the IAS exam. I mean, no, the civil service exam. I mean, you don't have a choice. So I'd taken Barsati, and I was studying for the exams. Written exams had been done. There was a knock on my door, and I opened the door, and my Barsati, and there were these two guys. This is an important part of the story. It's a very crazy story, but it's true. And there was Suhas Chakravarti and Dilip Simeon who were outside, uh, professors of history, and they sat down and going to rush through this. And Dilip Simeon's father was the headmaster of the Doon School at that time, Colonel Eric Simeon, amazing man, learned so much from him. But they said, like the history teacher at the Doon School has suddenly resigned and gone in the middle of the term. And Eric Simeon rang up his son Dilip Simeon saying, I need a history teacher now. And for God knows what reason, they thought of me. They came to my Barsati, and I said, hey, listen, teaching is not even on my radar screen. But kicking and screaming, they put me on a 9:30 bus that night to Dehradun, met Gurdayal Singh, amazing man, Eric Simeon. And they kind of said, listen, help us out for a couple of months till we find a real teacher. So I was going to be there for 3-4 months. And I stayed for 14 years. Just fell in love with this whole idea of learning together. The point of the story, so they were like the accidental head schoolmaster, and I still see of myself as a history teacher. Wonderful. I love that part of it. But the fellow who resigned and left, because of whom there was a vacancy, right? If he had gone 2 months earlier, there was nothing I would not have had the opportunity, because I would have been too close, written exam. And if he had gone 2 months later, it would be too close to the interviews. This guy, where did he go? He resigned and came to Bhutan. He came as the head of a school in Thimphu, the YHS school. And it is so because of Bhutan that I became a school teacher, because of that vacancy that came at that right point of time. So that's how I started getting into the school. And I just loved Doon School, just an amazing place. I think that if you spend time there and in Sindhya School and, certain of these schools, just by osmosis, you kind of imbibe a lot of learning because of the architecture, the whole theme. Then while I was there, I got a Charles Wallace scholarship, and I pushed off to England for a year, and I was based in Uppingham, and I managed to roam around a bit, came back to the Doon School, and then I was a housemaster, one of the youngest. For various personal reasons, I wanted to move out of the Doon School, move out of Dehradun. There was an ad in the paper for the British school, principal of the British school. I applied, got it for whatever reason. I was there. It was but I was there for a very, very short time. And then I met Mr. and Mrs. Arun Puri, who were planning to set up Vasan Valley School, had a conversation with them. And that's how Vasan Valley School and I got involved, and we started working with them. And I spent lots of years learning from the Puris, learning from the students, So therefore, I moved to Delhi, and there for the next 30 years, I was kind of a base. So that's my, many years at Doon School. Then I came here. While I was here at my sideline kind of started. I set up my NGO, which you mentioned, the Ritinjali, which is based on the names of my two daughters, Ritika and Anjalika. In Sanskrit, it means helping hands if you say Ritinjali. But if you're a good Punjabi and you say Ritanjali, then it means empty hands. So we have to be very careful of the Punjabi pronunciation of my NGO. Right. So but most people in northern India say Ritanjali. So I have to keep telling them, no, it's Ritinjali, which meant helping us. So I've been working with them for a long, long time. And while I was at Vasan Valley School, I got an opportunity to start working in Tihar Jail with the boys from the ages of 16 to 21. And for 9 years, I went there every single day. And I tell you, my whole perception of life completely changed there. I learned so much from the inmates there. I remember one of them saying to me, आप तो हमारे साथ ऐसा व्यवहार कर रहे हैं कि जैसे हम मंदिर के बाहर भजन गाते हुए पकड़े गए. So, that was the kind of relationship I had with them. I learned so much. My whole perception and my whole perspective on life changed with that. And then there was the coolies at the INA market that I had opened a night school with. So I would go very often from Tihar jail to INA market in the morning, having spent time at the Vasanali school. Wow. So the learning was very, very powerful. And I had come from a situation, just to give my parents, who my father came from a family coal mine owners in what is today Pakistan. My mother came from an academic family. Her father was a maths professor and a principal of the SP College in Srinagar. But through the partition, they went through ups and downs, and through their lives, there were many financial ups and downs. But I never ever saw them being bitter. So that's one of the things that we learned. I learned and imbibed, and that's what I keep talking about in Serene Strength also, that you have to take in, understand your own environment. So there was Tihar jail, there was INA market. My background of growing up with parents who went through up and down but were never bitter, always looked at everything, with a smile. You created your opportunities. Then this Ritinjali, which I founded about 1995. Then I set up something called the Second Chance School, which I really learned again from Ritinjali, which was for kids who had never had a first chance, who had never been to school before. And I knew that there was a lot of stuff happening inside the walls of the school, but because of Tihar and INA, I realized that there was an opportunity to take these kids and give them a second chance in life. But these are 16 and above, and they learn. We put them into internship programs, and they learned a lot. And the Second Chance School kids have grown up to become pretty good in many, many parts of the world. Now, when I was moving from the British school, first I moved from Doon School to this school, Uppingham in England. Then I came back to Doon School, went to British school. Doon School was an all-boys school from grade 6 upwards. British school was a co-educational school from almost 3 years of age onwards. So they were learning the whole thing. I realized that there were completely different areas of the ways of learning. Now I was coming into Vasanali school, and when I was coming into Vasanali school, it was going to be a co-educational day school, which required to understand what happened below the grade 7. And I realized very soon that there needs to be learning to be done. So that's when I set up my preschools before, they're called Pallavan, which are there in, and Pallavan means the growth of a new leaf. It's not a new leaf, it's the growth of a new leaf. And in this Pallavan, these preschools that happened, we started this in 2000, I think. I think it was 2000, your whole 10-year move. Vasanali School was about 1989, 1990, and 2000. And I remember that at that point in time, talking to you also about this, the phrase I put together was "Aao Seekhna Seekhein." That was the kind of tagline for the Pallavan schools, learning to learn. Now, of course, the learning to learn is a very well used, but 20 years ago when I first started talking about it, and we realized that that's where it needs to be come down, learning to learn. Aao Seekhna Seekhe. So these preschools went down there. Then I was doing a lot of work with the government school system. As you know, that when you talked, I felt that the rejuvenation of the government school system is the only real way forward. Creating some islands of excellence is great, but the real move forward, and that's why about the Serene Strength or Leading Out is to bring about larger access to thinking schools. And when I went to do some teacher training in rural areas of Kota, I came across a little place, small town called Jhalawar, and I worked there with the teachers and met the people. And I realized that their aspirations for their children were as high, if not higher, than the aspirations of children in metro cities in schools like Vasanali School. So I'd been talking through my Ritinji to everybody saying, do this, do this. And I said, I have to put my own money where my mouth is. So that's when I kind of hopped my house, took a loan, bought some land in Jhalawar, set up a school called Pallavan. It's functioning there. It's a CBSE kindergarten to grade 12 school. My sister Benu basically runs that. And it's doing really, really well. So these are we worked. So while all in these areas where it became very obvious that the school in Jhalawar had to be different from the Doon School, or the Vasanali School, or the Tihar Jail, so that fundamental thing of contextualizing who you are, right, became more and more crystal clear to me. That's when I was saying, what was the commonality between these various people? And the commonality was the ability, or the way to move forward was to be able to contextualize who you were, how you were growing up. So that contextuality became very important in my understanding. So also for a long time, I was dreaming, I talked to you also about this many, many years ago, about putting together an area, like a school, where we would also have a research center, right? And a teacher training center. And between these two would be a school, right? And when I had written Leading Out and I was talking to His Majesty about it, um, he just, he took that nascent idea and he's just made it into this big, huge thing. He's just an amazing man. And you've met him, and the other people who have not met him, he's young, visionary, he reads a lot, thinks a lot. So then we started thinking together about putting this Royal Academy together, which is made up of these three things, which there's a very serious research center there, there's a teacher development center there. So it took a long time first putting the whole ideology from Leading Out and putting it into paper, the theory, and then the practice of how do you get teachers to understand this. Even when we were introducing it into Vasant Valley School, teachers worked very hard, but there was a pushback from the parents. There were many kind of radical ideas of things that were being to implement this. Simple things like collapsing, the whole idea of siloizing the subjects, that you learn your physics separately, and your physics, chemistry, and your biology and your history. But in real life, you have to coalesce all these things and they have to become together. So the non-silo way of learning was one thing that I realized, that, you have to learn your physics and chemistry together and your history and geography, otherwise it doesn't work. So it took some time when I introduced this subject, this way of thinking at Vasant Valley School, there was a pushback. So we took it down a few years, and then slowly that group of children grew up with it. So it was there. But at the Royal Academy, we started with that premise. We've moved, and what we started with non-silo has gone now into something that we call cross-pollination, right? That's what it is. You have to cross. No, it's not just physics, chemistry, and biology, but also history and geography, or those subjects or domains or whatever you want to call them. But your ideas, your character, your personality, your 5 areas of development, they need to coalesce. And that is the serene strength. That is where you're able to bring out the best that you have. So as you can see that in many, from the Doon School to Vasant Valley School to Tihar Jail to Second Chance School to Jhalawar, we also worked in the slum areas, worked with the Fisherman's Village school that I set up outside of Pondicherry after the tsunami. I mean, that was such an amazing, and a whole bunch of people who worked with us together. P. Mohan came with me, and a lot of people work together. And then we, with the Gujarat, one other thing, if you don't mind, when we were working in the Gujarat, after the earthquake in Gujarat, and we were trying to get a school, we had taken on a whole bunch of stuff. There was, I'm sorry, there are some people listening, they might not enjoy or be impressed with what I'm saying, but there was a distinct divide amongst the primary schools in the district where I was working. So there were these schools, and these are little kids schools, tiny little kids, these are primary schools. And there was very distinct curriculum that existed in the World Bank supported schools. And there was a completely distinct curriculum in the supported schools. And never the twain should meet. So the people were saying, no, you can't go here, you can't take teachers from this because they've been trained in a certain manner to deliver the curriculum of the World Bank schools. And on the other side, there were these teachers who were trained in a certain manner to deliver this curriculum, which was designed by the UN body in some ways. And it blew my mind completely. And that's when I started talking about. So these were not teachers, these were just conveyor belts, where a curriculum was written somewhere and conveyed down, and they were trained into such a specific way that they could not possibly enter another school. That's what is such a huge realization. And that continues to this date, right? So that is where when I started realizing that, there has to be an ownership. It just can't be such a top-heavy situation. the ownership of making these roadmaps and not what we talk about here. So these various instances, I could talk on this for a long time, but you asked me for contextualization, ownership of the curriculum, both by the student and the teacher and the parent, both involved in creating a pathway, a roadmap for them, contextualizing what you're doing, removing the silos, bringing in cross-pollination, not just in subject content, but also in the ways you think your context should make all this. So just that's like a quick journey from 1977, which started in Bhutan, which I did not know about at that point of time when Dr. R.D. Singh left Doon School and pushed off to the YHS school here, creating a little vacuum for me to fill in. And here I am back in Bhutan with the Royal Academy, just in there with making sure that the Royal Academy, and the school at the Royal Academy, the research center at the Royal Academy, and the teacher development at the Royal Academy are just bubbling. And it is really wonderful to be here with the amazing colleagues that I have.